Hey guys, Scripttripper here with another video, and this is something I've been avoiding for a long time because I don't like to give attention to people that are just constantly going after people, and it's not just me, but I have to address it at this point. I've had enough, and I gotta just iron this out in terms of you guys and what you think I think of this. I know some of you see the Twitter exchanges and things like that. I just want to deal with it because, I've got some pretty clear, concise, sane, very objective thoughts on the Gatekeepers Alliance people. The channel itself has started to fade, or maybe, I don't know if it ever really became a thing, but they were doing videos pretty consistently a few months ago, and now it's like one a month. It's like very rare that specific channel actually posts a video. Like the last one they put out was 3 weeks ago, and then there was one a month ago, and then there's 4 months ago, 5 months ago. As a group, they've kind of faded. And I want to explain why I think that is. Because, for example, like Mr. Grizzy, he doesn't do what at least 3 of the 5 do. He centers most of his attention on shills and does these funny shill videos. I've done a few of those too. It's not my thing to make that my thing, but I've done a few of them too because it is funny. And so that's generally what he does. I don't think he's ever really talked any crap about me at all. I mean, he might have, guys. Let me know in the comment section. He's pretty funny, but he focuses generally on just shills, like people that just absorb the content, and then absorb more content, and it is funny. Melvin, I think, has made fun of me, but I'm not exactly sure. I think he called me a fence rider or something at one time. But I don't really know a ton about his content other than some of the stuff I saw a while ago I thought was, again, kind of funny and, making fun of shills and all that type of stuff. But what happened was, over the last few months, and I think it sort of appears, at least to me, that it coincides with the sort of moving away from the Gatekeepers Alliance channel and them kind of just sort of fading off, is they went from, particularly the other 3, OG, Purist, and United Space Alliance, they went from being a part of the overall fandom of Star Wars, with their criticisms, which is fine, and then took it to another level where they started to go after people that were essentially on their same side. And they went after them with this thing that, if you don't know a specific detail about the EU, right? Expanded universe, or you get it wrong, right? You post something that might be incorrect, right? That you're now a fake fan. So they went from going after shills, who, again, just absorb everything Disney does, and many of them just want to get their Disney packages of merch to promote and all those, and get access to the premieres, all those people that are desperate for that. They went from going after them, which is what I think Mr. Grizzy still does, generally. I think generally Melvin still does that, to attacking fellow fans that have a lot of the same views, but they just don't know all the details the way they think that they should, assuming that they're right about their details. And what that is, psychologically, is narcissism. It's pure narcissism. To say that somebody can't be a fan of something because they don't have all of the supposed vast knowledge about that particular thing that you do, that makes them fake, that is pure selfish, self-absorbed, narcissistic thought process. And it's gotten so bad with them, and particularly Purist and United Space Alliance have done some videos about me. United did a really cringy, awful rap video about me where he just swears a whole bunch of times. And then they also have clipped me and mixed up clips. There's another guy, I can't remember his name, but he's sort of affiliated with those guys too. And he just he'll take little tiny sound bites from a whole pile of my videos and make this 3-minute thing of totally out of context stuff. And some of it's hilarious because some of it, and there's going to be one thing in particular he makes fun of me for, quote, and lumps me in with theory on this too. Literally, George Lucas himself said. And they make these claims that George Lucas this and George Lucas that. And a lot of it has to do with the EU, right? and how the EU is canon. And that's all they say is if you don't agree with that, you're an idiot. And they have to be lying, because the vast swath of George Lucas and George Lucas affiliated people saying what they have to say about the EU is so extensive that there's no way they wouldn't know that. So they're just saying, they're, again, in a narcissistic way, they're saying, I know everything about the EU, so therefore EU is canon, even though there's this huge array of information saying that clearly it is not. Okay? There was a time when I was kind of wavering about 6 months ago, but now that I've done the research, forget about it. It's not. It never was. But they say it is because they have the knowledge that you don't. So they can make the claim that you're a fake fan and they're better than you because it is canon and they know more about it than you, even though it isn't canon, right? And it's really sad because they've actually committed channel sort of or social media suicide in a way. Like they've completely shot themselves in the foot because they've essentially said, I'm the best, you're the worst, no matter who you are. Oh, but listen to me and react to my content and watch my videos. And the regular fan is like, if I'm going to be told I'm a fake fan because I don't know every detail about some EU story, or I question the validity of some of the EU stuff as it pertains to George's views, then I don't want to be involved with this person. And that's essentially why I've been ignoring them, because I actually initially, I think I followed all three of them. I'm pretty sure at one time on Twitter, but they changed, right? It was almost like we're not getting attention, and so now we're going to shift from the shills to actual fans that agree with us for the most part, but they don't know everything we know, so we're going to attack them so that we look better to others. But the problem is the others see that and say, well, dude, you guys are saying that if I don't follow everything you say and agree with everything you say and know all the knowledge you know, I'm a fake fan. So why would I want to be part of your social media presence? Why would I want to support you? They don't understand that they're actually killing their own channels by doing this, right? Because like there's a wide array, a wide variety of people. Listen, I'll make fun of somebody like Jacob because it's funny. But at the end of the day, he's not a fake fan. He's definitely a fan of Star Wars. He just likes stuff that's kind of dumb, in my opinion, or is really dumb, in my opinion, right? It's the same with anybody. Everybody's in a different place. But they latched on to this idea that they're the only real fans because, again, they've spent a lot of time in the EU and have that knowledge of the EU, and then they lie and say that it was always canon so that they are the arbiters of truth based on a lie. And I'm going to prove to you what a lie it is. And let's get into this. This is going to shatter their lie claim that they constantly make on Twitter, especially OG, but the other guys too, that the EU is canon and always has been, and you idiots that don't know anything about the EU aren't real fans, okay? This destroys that idea. It's fake, it's lies, it's their way of trying to say that they're better and superior and their opinion is better and superior. That is literally what it is. That's all it is, based on a lie. So let's get into this. I did what I could, by the way, to keep this in order of the timeline of quotes from George, because I kind of want to show you guys how it kind of developed over time. So when I was doing this research, these quotes were not in order, so I had to like go back, get the exact place that the quote was made, because a lot of people just kind of threw it on forums and different things, and they didn't really give the best backup information for it. And I wanted to make sure we had that and have it in order so you can see how George was thinking the entire time, how his thoughts maybe progressed and or changed or not, right? Or not, or stayed the same, so that we can get a very, very vivid, objective, factual place in this. So you can understand that these people that are making these claims are full of crap. And this is not about Disney being good, EU bad, EU good, Disney bad. This is just simply saying whatever your perspective is on the EU, Disney, Star Wars, whatever. It doesn't matter. This is just about how George Lucas viewed it, how the people around him viewed it, and whether or not this Gatekeeper Alliance nonsense that the EU was canon is real. Right? And so that's why this is laid out the way I laid it out. But again, they decided to go after people that were essentially on their same side because I think they just did it because they weren't seeing any growth and they just saw it as a way to get attention. And so again, I didn't give them any attention for the most part. I mostly ignored them. And now, after a rap video, and then Buddy made another really dumb video about me. I haven't even watched it yet. I think he's trying to say based on the thumbnail that I think Ben Solo and Disney's awesome or something. That's what it looks like. But what are you getting this? You guys know if you've been following my channel for any length of time, this is ridiculous. So I'll get to the quotes in a sec. So there's two reasons they went after me. One was that I didn't think the EU was canon. I don't think George Lucas is absolutely perfect. Which, by the way, when you see his quotes about the expanded universe, the fact that they use George as a thing, and then also say the expanded universe is canon is so hilarious, because it's what are you talking about? You're against George Lucas Star Wars. Guess what? The EU isn't George Lucas Star Wars. It's so funny to me how twisted and weird their minds work. So there's that aspect of it. And then the other thing that really set them off too was that I gave Skeleton Crew a chance. These are the same people that went after Critical Drinker. They're just idiots. I initially tried to get into Skeleton Crew, and the first few episodes I gave it a 4 out of 10 or something, a satisfactory, low satisfaction grading, and then they just oh, you're a shill, you think you're a fence rider, look at this fence riding shill. It's you guys are nuts. You guys are nuts. And you guys know me, everything I do is analytical, so I take this story, I take the scenes, I analyze them, I'm as objective as humanly possible. And so here we are. Let's get objective here about the EU, because that's their big argument. You're a fake fan if you don't accept the EU as George Lucas canon and know everything about it, because they do, and they're better than you. So 1999, we'll start there. And this is from Barry Norman's Film Night. It was broadcast on the BBC in 1999 in July. Oh, and one last thing. I have the years in order. I don't necessarily have exactly when the quotes within those years were, but I got the years in order. So 1999, George Lucas says, yeah, I'm certainly not going to worry about that. And the fans, they generate their own stories, their own ideas. They have their own fantasy life that goes around the movies, and that's fine. But I try to keep away from all that. I don't even read the offshoot books that come out based on Star Wars. He doesn't read them, guys. He doesn't even read the EU. Guys. Okay, that's just one. Okay, there's so many here, guys. This is going to absolutely obliterate this entire argument, and it needs to happen because it's just nonsense. It's a narcissistical, nonsensical load of crap. So TV Guide in 2001 says, novelists have written Star Wars sequels using the same characters and extending their stories. And then George says, oh, sure, they're done outside my little universe. How can you interpret that any other way? So this is 2001. TV Guide interview. They're outside my little universe. So even if the first quote you want to argue that, oh, that wasn't the EU, that was other fan stuff. Okay, well, this one's definitely the EU. They're literally saying, yet novelists have written Star Wars sequels. They're saying that. And he says, they're done outside my universe. What planet are you on? He's saying it to your face. But because you have knowledge of it and you're a narcissist, you want to pretend that it's canon. So that you can feel like you're better than everybody else. And constantly quote tweet people. That's all. By the way, that's all these people do. They quote tweet other people's tweets and try to make fun of them and go after them. People that could be supporters of their social media presence, that agree with them on Disney and a lot of stuff, but they're so desperate for attention in their narcissistic ways. Here's another one. A year later, 2002. Do you supervise the development of all the off-movie stories? After all, Star Wars exists in books and in comics. I try not to think about that. I have my own world in movies, and I follow that. He doesn't care. And I think the whole thing that these guys are basing everything on comes from this one small section of George's interview when he was announcing that he was going to make Kathleen Kennedy his successor and sell to Disney. So listen to this one small segment, and this is what I think their entire argument about EU as canon is based on.
I have story treatments of 7, 8, and 9 and a bunch of other movies, and obviously we have hundreds of books and comics and everything you could possibly imagine. So, I sort of moved that treasure trove of stories and various things to Kathy, and I have complete confidence that she's going to take them and make great movies.
So we're going to say that the whole thing is based on that when there's all these... I'm not even close to being done. I'm not even close. So that was 2002 from theforce.net. I have my own world in movies that I follow. In other words, he doesn't care about... So he doesn't read the EU. He doesn't pay attention to it. But it's the most important thing in Star Wars. Like, I'm not arguing that it wouldn't have been better to do the EU than Disney, but you guys, you're full of crap. Because you're full of yourself. Way to go, you've read all the EU books. George didn't have time. Woo! Here's another one, 2002, from Cinescape. There are two worlds here. There's my world, which is the movies. And there's this other world that has been created, which I say is a parallel universe. The licensing world of the books, games, and comic books. It's a parallel universe. In other words, it runs beside, not in conjunction. Beside. It has some of the same characters, some of the same stuff, the same universe, but it's parallel. It's not part of the movies. He's making that very clear. And you guys just lie. You lie to everybody. You lie on Twitter constantly. I don't know why you guys do this. Why are you doing this for? Just because you want to feel like you're bigger and better than you are because you read a bunch of books? Like, really? Are you serious? That's what this is? Can you quote any good stories other than the movies? This is from 2002. Can you quote any good stories other than the movies? No, I don't think so. And he laughs. That's how much he cared about your EU. I don't think so, laughs. You guys, it's great that you have all that knowledge. That doesn't make you better than anybody else. Whether you think it does or not. And then when you go to George Lucas and say, oh, well, it's George Lucas of Star Wars, George Lucas, I love George Lucas, how dare you criticize George Lucas. George Lucas thinks your books are dumb and laughs at them. Okay? Like, what are you talking about? What do you think of the Expanded Universe books, he's asked in 2003. The books are in a different universe. I've not read any of them. And I told them when they started writing, I wouldn't read any of them. And I blocked out certain periods. In other words, certain time periods where they couldn't touch where the real story happens. You guys, why are you lying? They're in a different universe. I have not read any of them. And Buddy made some video about me saying, and with Star Wars Theory, saying that I don't have time, because I don't have time to read them. I have way too much going on. And he was using that as like see, he's a fake fan. He's a fence-riding loser. Because he said he doesn't have time to read the EU. Neither does your god, George Lucas. He never read any of them. He didn't even read one. You guys are so stupid. This is so insane that you went down this road because you're a narcissist and you knew full well this was the case. And you still went down that road because you really thought people were so stupid they wouldn't be able to look this stuff up and find out what he really thought. Because you're a narcissist. Narcissists always think everyone else around them is stupid and they're the smart ones. This is unbelievable. This is even crazier than I thought. I'm not even close to being done, you guys. The amount of quotes are just nuts. This question was selected from the Furry Conflict poll. It says, how much does the expanded universe influence the movies? Okay, and this is from Mark Xavier's 2003 book. It's a report, I should say. It's based on the Q&A session with George Lucas. And that occurred at the University of South Carolina in 2003 in November. Okay? So the question selected was, how much does the expanded universe influence the movies? As I asked him, Lucas leaned back a moment and said to me, get ready, OG, get ready, very little. When he first had agreed to let people write expanded universe books, he had said, I'm not going to read them, and it was a different universe, as we've now established, and that he wanted to keep away from the time period of his saga. He jokingly complained, however, that now when he writes a script, he has to look through an encyclopedia to make sure that a name he comes up with doesn't come too close to something in the EU. He loved the EU, guys. EU was his canon. He never read it, never cared, but boy, he's sure it's his canon, and if you don't believe that, you're dumb, and you need to follow the Gatekeepers Alliance so that you're not a dummy, because they're the smart ones. Oh my gosh, they're just narcissists. The novels and comic books are other authors' interpretations of my creation. Sometimes I tell them what they can and can't do, but I just don't have time to read them. So I was blasted for saying I don't have time to read them, and their Lord and Savior said the exact same thing. They're not my vision of what Star Wars is. I was called a liar by these people for saying that George Lucas didn't really view the EU as anything. He authorized it, but he didn't endorse it. And I was called a liar by them. You're a liar! Boy, oh boy, folks. When life slaps you across the face, this is what it looks like if you're one of those people. This is an interview with George Lucas in the special editions. When he's asked about the novels, this is 2004, so we're working our way up. When asked about the novels and whatnot, he simply says, talking about the EU, the novels and whatnot, those are another author's interpretation of what I have created. Do I need to repeat myself, United Spacer guy and purist? Do I need to repeat that for you, or did you hear what he said? Those are another author's interpretation of what I've created, and not to be taken seriously as far as what is really going on in the Star Wars world. So that interview with Kathleen Kennedy and what he says there, saying, oh, we have all these novels and stuff, you think that means that everything else he said is just a total lie, and that he was super into the EU that he never read and never cared. Like, it's just, insanity. It's insanity. Then in 2005, he's being interviewed by Starlog, and they say, the Star Wars universe is so large and diverse. Do you ever find yourself confused by the subsidiary material that's in the novels, comics, and other offshoots? I don't read that stuff. I haven't read any of the novels. I don't know anything about that world. So these Gatekeepers Alliance are telling Star Wars fans that if they don't know everything about the EU, they're fake fans. George says, I don't know anything about that world, and he's the creator of Star Wars and the person that they worship and the person that they think thought the EU is canon. So if you have never read an EU book, you are closer to George Lucas than you are to these people that claim you're a fake fan. Oh, man. I lied. I said I wouldn't enjoy doing this. I am enjoying this because they've been talking smack about me for a long time. I don't know anything about that world. That's a different world than my world. When I said other people could make their own Star Wars stories, we decided that, like Star Trek, we would have two universes. My universe and then this other one. They try to make their universe as consistent with mine as possible, but obviously they get enthusiastic and want to go off in other directions. In other words, he did not endorse everything in the EU. Okay, can you just move on now and stop calling everybody fake fans that isn't a big, huge fan of the EU like you are? It's cool if you are. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. They go off in other directions. What does that mean? That means the argument is at least nuanced to a degree. Where things like Han and Leia having kids, he's probably okay with. We're going to get into that too. But there's other things he's not okay with, like Palpatine coming back. Okay? And Luke getting married. Okay? So, in other words, what he's saying in his interview with Kathleen Kennedy is, You have this stuff to draw off. I also might draw off of it. I reserve the right to. It's under my company. But I'm not necessarily going to because I don't know anything about it. And if I want to know about it, I'll look into it. Because it's there. But that's it. It's just there. 2023, George Lucas said the movies are gospel, everything else is gossip. That's a pretty famous quote. Okay, then in 2005, he's being interviewed by MTV. So if we'll never see it on screen, what does happen to Princess Leia and Han Solo after they fall in love? And of course, we know there's EU stories about that. He says Han and Leia probably did get married. Probably did. In other words, yeah, sure. You know, Han and Leia probably did get married. Lucas conceded. They settled down. She became a senator, and they got a nice little house with a white picket fence. Han Solo was out there cooking burgers on the grill. Is that a movie? I don't think so. That's George Lucas, May 2005, MTV interview. But they put the stories of Han and Leia on this massive pedestal and then use George's name to say that they're canon, and he's like, oh, he's cooking burgers on the grill. Is that a movie? I don't think so. You know what I mean? It's so funny because and they'll call people grifters, but their whole thing is the biggest lying, faulty grift of all time. The worst. It's way worse than the shills even. It's worse than the shills because at least the shills just gobble up everything and say everything's amazing, and they're not compromising. This is total compromise. I mean, is it possible that some of the shills really hate Disney Star Wars and they're just saying they love it? I guess. That's a grift. But these guys, their whole entire identity is based on a lie. And then they're using George Lucas to purport said lie. It's crazy to me. This is nuts. Okay, so now we're up to 2007. Howard Rothman, president of Lucas Licensing, in charge of the EU, tries to be consistent, but sometimes he goes off on tangents, and it's hard to hold him back. This is what George is saying. He once said to me that there are two Star Trek universes. There's the TV show, and then there's all the spin-offs. He said that these were completely different and didn't have anything to do with each other. So I said, go ahead. So I've had these arguments with these people that George was heavily involved and was there all the time. And here's Howard Rothman, who's in charge of the EU, and he has to convince George that it's okay to have these other stories because, listen, they're not part of the same universe. They're completely different. It's okay, George, don't worry about it. Let's do this. No one's going to view these as part of your 6 films or your canon. They're just fun outside stories. What's wrong with that? And then George said, okay, go ahead. Oh, boy. Okay, and now this is 2008. And now there have been novels about the events after episode 6, which isn't at all what I would have done with it. That's his canon, bro. It isn't at all what I would have done with it. That's George Lucas's canon. The Star Wars story is really the tragedy of Darth Vader. That is the story. Once Vader dies, he doesn't come back to life. The Emperor doesn't get cloned, and Luke doesn't get married. That's because it's canon, guys. That's the EU's canon, bro. And you're a fake fan if you don't believe it. If you don't think it's canon, you're a fake fan. Bunch of fakers. Come to my channel, fake fans. Fake fans love to support other Star Wars people that call them fake fans. It's awesome. That's what they want. It isn't at all what I would have done with it. And they say that it was canon. Oh, man. That's crazy to me. Then in 2008, on a comingsoon.net article, George says, but there's 3 worlds. There's my world that I made up. There's the licensing world, that's the books and comics and all that kind of stuff, the games, which is their world. Not to be confused with my world. And then there's the fans' world, which is also very rich in imagination, but they don't always mesh. All I'm in charge of is my world. He's literally distancing himself from the EU. He's saying, that's not my world, guys. That's somebody else's. Don't lump me in with that. It's cool if they want to do it, but don't. I didn't write that. I'm not part of that. He's literally spent his career distancing himself from the EU. Oh, but it's his canon, guys. You're a fake fan. He did say that Clone Wars is part of his canon. So his 6 movies, the Clone Wars is canon. Unfortunately for me. I don't like it, but it is canon. This is Star Wars. I don't make a distinction between the Clone Wars series and the films. That's from 2011, Sci-Fi Now. So I'm disappointed to hear that because I think the Clone Wars started a lot of problems. But again, George isn't perfect. I don't worship the guy. George Lucas says there has never been any war between the Jedi and the Sith in his Star Wars canon. So you remember like all the big pre-OT, like going back, Knights of Old Republic, all those other things, and the big Sith wars between the Jedi, they never happened in George's canon. There's nothing wrong with them. Nobody says they suck. But saying someone sucks because they say it's not canon or doesn't know a whole lot about it makes you a narcissist and you suck because you're a liar. This is an excerpt from StarWars.com's oral history of Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And George says, everybody said, oh, well, there was the war between the Jedi and Sith. Well, that never happened. That's just made up by fans or somebody. What really happened is the Sith ruled the universe for a while, 2,000 years ago. Each Sith has an apprentice, but the problem was each Sith Lord got to be powerful, and the Sith Lords would try to kill each other because they all wanted to be the most powerful. So in the end, they killed each other off. There wasn't anything left, which makes way more sense than the Sith coexisting and having these big wars. An evil person wants all the power for themselves. They fight amongst themselves. That makes way more sense. So, again, if you like those stories, have at her. But he didn't. He's saying that doesn't make sense, essentially. But anyway, there's a whole matrix of backstory that has never really come out. It's really just history that I gathered up along the way. It's all based on backstories that I'd written, setting up what the Jedi were, setting up what the Sith were, setting up what the Empire was, setting up what the Republic was, and how it all fit together. I never really got a chance to explain the wills part. You can find this article at the NabuNews.wordpress. George Lucas's vision of the galaxy's ancient times is clearly different from the expanded universe. Yes! And actually makes way more sense. Many wars between Jedi and Sith in the Old Republic era were told in games, books, and comics. The current Lucasfilms canon didn't explore this area yet. Like, guys, what are you talking about? And the thing, too, is, like, why can't you just have fun and just enjoy the EU? Like, why does it have to be part of your ego and your knowledge and you're better than everyone? Like, just enjoy it. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. No one cares. But you have to lump it in with George Lucas, that he endorses my EU, so to make yourself seem superior to other fans. In 2019, George says, I've written everything I've done. And so, guys, there it is. Those are the George quotes. And so there's the proof in the pudding. So go ahead, you guys, make your videos, call people shills, call people fence riders. That are totally on your side with Disney Star Wars, but just don't worship the EU. Because guess what? Neither does George. We're actually way more in line with George than you. So you can't use his name anymore. You just can't. This destroys your entire persona, online persona. So I want to get into a few other quotes from people that have had access to George or been around George. Just to kind of finish this off. I am going to quote Pablo Hidalgo because I'm not a fan of Pablo Hidalgo. I'm not a fan of the Disney Story Group whatsoever. I'm not a fan of Dave Filoni. But these guys did have access to George. And so they made their views about what they thought of the EU as it relates to George. Right? So Pablo Hidalgo said in 2012, Lucas allows for an expanded universe that exists parallel to the one he directly oversees. In other words, he's just basically going off the same quotes I just read to you about George. Though these expanded universe stories may get his stamp of approval, they don't enter his canon unless they are depicted cinematically in one of his projects. which is exactly right, because he didn't even read them. They got approval because in his mind it was a separate thing that he will happily collect royalties off and happily allow those people to write those stories and make money off of them. He's letting people use his Star Wars stuff to make money too. It's not just his royalties. So it's helping those authors too. But approval does not mean acceptance. He never read any of them, guys. He didn't read any EU books. Think about that. In the old days, George Lucas saw his universe as separate from publishing. He wasn't at all interested in it connecting. Pablo Hidalgo said that in 2016. That's true. We get that from those quotes. In 2008, from Dave Filoni, this series, Clone Wars series, at least to George, is not EU. It is part of Star Wars as he sees it, and he was quoted as such. I think, if anything, there was a period where Henry Gilroy and I had to learn exactly what it took to be part of George Lucas's Star Wars and tell the Star Wars story his way. We had to learn how to look at the galaxy from his point of view and let go of some of what we considered canon after we found out the ideas were only EU. Really, we had to unlearn what we had learned and go back to the movies as the defining source material, which totally falls in line with George's quotes. That does not mean that what Dave Filoni has done has been good. That does not mean that Dave Filoni hasn't gone off the rails. In fact, he's gone off the rails just like the EU authors did. When George earlier, in those quotes was saying that they kind of would go off and do their own thing and wouldn't really consult or think about what I might think about it. Dave does the same thing. Disney is basically like turned into EU in a way, right? In the sense that the authors of it are going off on a tangent and not really caring really all that much about how George would have done it, right? So I'm not giving Filoni any kind of, kudos here. I'm just saying he's just confirming what George has already said. In 2017, he said, "For me and my training here at Lucasfilm working with George, he and I always thought the expanded universe was just that. It was an expanded universe. Basically, it's stories that are really fun and really exciting, but they're a view on Star Wars, not necessarily canon to him. In other words, there's certain aspects of it that he would like. He hasn't gone through all of them and listed them for us. But for the most part, he didn't care, he didn't read them, and they weren't part of anything." That was the way it was from the day I walked into Lucasfilm with him all through Clone Wars, everything we worked on. He felt the Clone Wars series and his movies were what was actually the reality of it all, the canon. Yeah, and his quotes confirmed that. There's this notion that everything changed when everything became legends, and I can see why people think that, but having worked with George, I can tell you that it was always very clear, and he made it very clear that the films and the TV shows were the only things that he considered canon, and that was it. And again, all of those quotes show that. So now we get to Leland Chee, and Leland Chee was the archivist for the EU, right? So now we're getting into people that were directly involved. There's him and one other guy. They're directly involved. And while he managed the continuity, the stories themselves are written by many different authors, such as Alan Dean Foster and others, obviously. But he was the guy who they needed to kind of keep the EU continuity. I will say this, just because the EU has better continuity than Disney, and it does not mean it's canon in George's eyes. It never was. Never was. Listen to what this guy says. They called him the keeper of the holocron. Listen to what this guy says. Lucas's canon, and when I say his canon, I'm talking about what he was doing in the films and what he was doing in the Clone Wars was hugely important. But what we were doing in the books really wasn't on his radar, which he said as much. So why are you guys turning this into a thing? A year before, he says, on the Sci-Fi Wire, what George did with the films and the Clone Wars was pretty much his universe. He didn't really have that much concern for what we were doing in the books and games, so the expanded universe was very much separate. So when these gatekeepers and these people say that George, authorized and he approved of all these ideas in the EU and he signed off of them, no, he didn't. No, he didn't. He didn't have much concern for what we were doing. He just let them do it in a separate parallel universe. What are you guys talking about? You guys are just liars, man. Straight up liars. Howard Rothman, president of Lucas Licensing, in charge of the EU. Only the movies were canon. EU was an alternate universe. That was one of my mandates when I began the spin-off publishing program. It was a sacrosanct rule that everything had to relate to each other, be consistent with each other, and be consistent with the movies, which were canon. We were pretty religious about doing that. Our biggest problem was a guy named George Lucas being he didn't buy into the spin-off fiction and the game program and all the alternate universe we were creating. He didn't buy into it. What more do you idiots need? We wanted it to be one universe. We felt strongly that that's what it needed to be, but George, as a filmmaker, didn't want to be beholden to someone else's creative vision. In other words, he'll happily see an idea in the EU and be like, oh, that might be kind of cool. Other than that, that's it. He didn't want to be beholden. So we would have very interesting skirmishes because we had a bunch of stuff that became, for the fans, pretty much canon. He's talking directly to you guys. You guys thought that. Okay? Pretty much canon about what happened after Return of the Jedi, but different places in the galaxy were called lots of different things, and if he was proposing to do something in the sequels that contradicted that, we would have long debates, which usually ended with, at least after the first session, with, I don't care, this is what I'm doing. I don't care, this is what I'm doing, George said. And maybe after the fourth or fifth session, sometimes after 4 or 5 sit-down meetings, sometimes George would say, all right, maybe we can change it this way. And this is proposing something in the prequels and proposing things that came after Return of the Jedi. All right, maybe. After getting basically a sales job for 4 or 5 sessions, he might do something, maybe. This is now, the last quote I'll give you is from Sue Rostoni, Lucas licensing manager. This is from, managing editor, I should say. This is from 2004. And she says, George knows more about Star Wars than we do. He doesn't see the expanded universe as his Star Wars, but as ours. I think this has to be mentioned. What do you guys need, man? Like, what do you guys need? Just nuke your accounts. Literally. Nuke all of your accounts. He doesn't see the expanded universe as his Star Wars, but as ours. I think this has been mentioned previously, maybe in other places, but it's not new information as far as I remember. And that's back in 2004. It's not new information as far as I remember that he doesn't see the expanded universe as his Star Wars. Seriously, delete your channels, nuke your Twitter accounts. Everything you're based on is a lie, guys. Why did you guys attack us? The people that were supporting the anti-Disney thing. Like, why did you guys move the goalpost from criticizing crappy Disney Star Wars to, oh, if you don't think the EU is canon and worship it and know everything about it, you're a fake fan? Why did you do that? What were you thinking? Why are you such narcissists that think you know everything? You're not. You're dumb. And you know you're lying because there's no way you guys haven't seen some of these quotes. So your whole personas are based on lies. You guys need to delete your channels. You need to nuke your Twitters because this is all going to come out. I'm not the only one. There's another video that came out a little while ago, a few days ago. It's got over 100,000 views showing you guys for the liars that you are. He does it in a different way, but I don't know what you guys are doing, man.
This one's going to be tough, but it's something that needs to be said. Guys, when you're making the decision to support a channel, you need to do so with authenticity, not just because you want to gain some attention and support for your eventual channel launch. That's fine if you want to try to launch your own channel, but don't support a channel initially just to try and leech off of the followers from that channel. Leave it to the professionals when it comes to a lot of this stuff. Don't go out there and support someone. Oh, I'm going to support them for 90 days, 6 months, and then ghost them once you start your own channel. That's not authentic, and it's not something that we here at United Spacers Alliance support.
You need to start over because you screwed up. You messed up. And again, I'm sorry to do this, But that's just the way it is. You screwed up and you lied. You've been lying for years now. Straight up lying to people's faces and alienating people that were on your side when it came to Disney Star Wars, including me. I used to consider you guys friends. And then you shifted the goalpost for some reason. I don't know why. And now you look like complete idiots. And I'm happy to expose how stupid and liars you are. Anyways, guys, let me know in the comment section what you think. If you like this channel, please like, subscribe. It always helps the channel. Feel free to check out the rest of my channel. Have yourselves a real good day.